Back with you on Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Head to youtube.com. Find Locked On Sports Atlanta in your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment. Free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. Download us today. Leave us a 5-star review. And, of course, follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Steve Wyche from Atlanta Falcons, NFL Network, right? I mean, he was a former beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons, talked about one of the under-the-radar rookies for the Atlanta Falcons that he thinks might be sneaky, makes the biggest impact in this rookie class, and that is their 5th-round draft pick, the running back out of BYU, I almost said LSU, BYU, Tyler Allgeier. Now, he brought up the fact about his production in college. Last couple of years in college, 2,700 yards, 36 rushing touchdowns. He is a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. And then he brings up the fact that the Falcons were willing to move on from their starting running back last year of Mike Davis. Now, let me say like this. Yes, Davis was their starter, but he only started 8 games last year. And to be honest with you, for the production that he gave you last year, that was an easy decision because you picked up $2.5 million on the cap. With all due respect, that cutting Mike Davis was one of the easier. I called this at the beginning of the year. That was one of the easiest decisions the Falcons were going to make, was moving on from Mike Davis. Whether they had a backup plan or didn't have a backup plan, saving $2.5 million for a guy who didn't even average 4 yards per attempt, literally, to just give you some perspective, Mike Davis's rushing yards per attempt and receiving yards per attempt, when combined, wouldn't even get you a first down. So if he runs it and catches it in back-to-back plays, he doesn't pick up enough yards to get you a first down. That was an easy call. So can Tyler Allgeier, and here's what Mike Davis's stats were last year. In 17 games and 8 starts, 138 carries, 503 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He also caught 44 passes out of the backfield, 259 yards with 1 touchdown. So can Tyler Allgeier be, say, let's call it 760 yards and 4 touchdowns of offense from scrimmage? I think that's realistic. I think that's a realistic number, and I don't think it's going to be all asked on Tyler Allgeier. Yes, I mean, Cordell Patterson is their other main starting running back, but I think that they're hoping that whether it's Kadri Allison or Williams or one of these other guys, they can find a role. And look, I've said I would like to see more of Kadri Allison. I'd like to see him get into a more regular rotation. If nothing else, let's find out if he's supposed to be here long-term or if his time in Atlanta just needs to end, right? It's crap or get off the pot time for Kadri Allison. So if they can find a role for him to kind of take some of the pressure off of a Tyler Allgeier, because again, when you ask a rookie to handle a big workload, and again, when I say big workload, I mean even 150 carries is probably a decent sized workload. And I do expect that the Falcons are going to run the football more. We spent a lot of time talking about the fact that Matt Ryan's average pass attempt season the last 4 years is 600. Mariota's best ever pass attempt season is 453. So there is a big discrepancy between what the Falcons averaged over the last handful of years and what Mariota's peak performance has been. So I expect them to run the football more. So everybody's going to have to probably take some more of the workload on, and they're going to have to probably find a third running back to be in this mix as well. Now, we'll talk more about this in just a minute, but I want to tell you about my friends over at BetOnline.net, right? We got all kinds of things going on. Man, you had the home run derby last night. Didn't go so well for Ronnie, but home run derby, all-star game. We're going to get right back into regular season, Major League Baseball. You got MLS, you got golf. You just had your final major wrapping up over the weekend, right? Boxing, MMA. You got all kinds of things going on. And, oh, yeah, don't look now, but coming right around the corner is both preseason, regular season NFL, and college football will be here before you know it as well. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. You need reviews, you need news, you need notes, you need wagering information, including live betting, esports, scores. BetOnline.net is your place to go. Fastest, easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports events and all your favorite teams. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends going on. Learn more about the action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. Now, Can Tyler Allgeier be a guy who, more importantly than what his total yards are or will be, a guy that averages over 4 yards per carry? Because that's sort of the magic threshold in the NFL, right? That's sort of where the Falcons have really struggled between their running backs and their offensive line, is to get guys who are over 4 yards per attempt. Because if you're not going to be a running back that's over 4 yards per attempt in the NFL, your ability to effectively run the football is going out the window. Even Cordell Patterson literally was right at 4 yards per attempt. So if the running game for the Atlanta Falcons is going to be better, more than just how often they run it, more than just what the accumulation of yards is, I look at the yards per attempt. If we're not an offense, running game, offensive line combination that can't get you up and over at least 4 yards per attempt, you're not going to be able to run the football effectively. So that's what I'm interested to see, because Allgeier can get through the tackles and he can be very much a red zone. Again, I don't play fantasy football, but for the fantasy football nudniks of the world out there, if you're talking about, hey, who's a guy that maybe could scarf up some touchdowns and things like that, I think Allgeier can be that guy. Guy had 36 touchdowns the last couple of years at BYU. And look, they say what you will, but they've had a pretty good passing offense there, right? Remember Zach Wilson a couple of years ago? But even in that year, Allgeier ran for like 1,100 yards and scored a whole handful of touchdowns. So he's a guy who might scarf up some touchdowns down in the red zone. And I think that's what they hope for, right? I think he's more built and ideally a fit for running between the tackles down close, by the goal line. And again, we've talked about, if this offense is going to figure some things out, they have to run the football effectively. They have to be able to run it in the red zone. They have to be able to find a way to score more touchdowns, right? I think Allgeier can be a guy that helps them out in all of that. If you told me he's 150 carries, 600 yards, somewhere around in that range, okay, that gives you 4 yards per attempt, I'd take that all day long. And maybe half a dozen touchdowns to go along with it. 150 carries, 600 yards, 6 touchdowns, I'd take that all day long out of Tyson Allgeier. I'd take that all day, or Tyler Allgeier, excuse me. I'd take that all day long out of Allgeier. So I like what Steve Weiss is saying. I think that there is some merit in that. I think that there's no doubt that, given the way that this offense wants to try to move in a different direction, where we're going to move away from huck it all over the yard and we don't have all the offensive personnel. And again, we've talked about the fact that they have 3 of the 9 worst pass blocking offensive linemen in the NFL, trying to become a more power running football team and play more to the strengths, hopefully, of Mayfield or Hennessy or McGarry or whatever the combination of the offensive linemen that are in question is going to be. Allgeier is going to have to be a big part of that. Now, I don't think Allgeier is going to be a guy who they're going to hand the ball off 250 times and just, run him like crazy. I don't think that this coaching staff is going to do that. And I still think they want to get the ball in Cordell Patterson's hands. I do think that they want to have sort of I don't want to say running back by committee. That's what it will probably look like at times. But I do think that they want to mix 3 guys into that. I do think that to get more rushing attempts, it's not just take 1 or 2 guys. And let's face it, Cordell Patterson is not built to be a guy to run it 250 times, right? The fact that he ran it 153 times last year, was probably about where his max is. I mean, maybe a little more. Maybe he can get to, 170 or something like that. But certainly you don't expect him to be a 200 carry type of running back. So Allgeier is going to be an interesting guy to watch. I do like the idea that he's maybe a little bit under the radar. If you're a fantasy football guy, he might be a guy that scarfs you up some touchdowns out there. But if I can get 150 for 600 and 6 touchdowns, I'll be happy as a clam if I can get that out of Allgeier. All right, when we come back, should the Braves make a run at an Avenger? We'll talk about that next. Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta.